Hey everybody, welcome back to my coverage of the PogChamps 3 tournament. This is the final group stage game, the tiebreaker Armageddon game between Ludwig and MoistCritical. So whoever wins this will win the Group D group, but both of them will be still going on to the championship bracket. So the Armageddon format, for those of you who don't know, is basically it's a format where there will be a winner at the end of the game no matter what, and the way that that's done is if the game is a draw, then black is declared a winner. However, to make it a little bit easier on white, black will only have 4 minutes and white will have 5 minutes, and also white has that first move advantage that they have at the beginning of every chess game. So Ludwig did have the higher accuracy played according to the chess.com accuracy calculator, so he did get to choose which color he wanted to play in this game, and he chose white, which I think is the correct decision. So Ludwig has the white pieces. MoistCritical will only have 4 minutes. The timer will update after this first move, and let's see how the game went. We have e4 and now c5 from MoistCritical, the Sicilian defense, and Ludwig goes for his c3 Sicilian that we saw in game 2 of this match. We have knight c6 and now d4 from Ludwig, and here in the second game, MoistCritical took this pawn, and he was down a piece very early on, but instead we have d5 from MoistCritical, a much better continuation in my opinion, and yeah, this is very good for MoistCritical so far. Both players doing very well. We have e takes d5 and now queen takes d5, knight to f3 and bishop g4, bishop e2, both players developing and doing very well so far. We have knight f6 and castles, and here MoistCritical castles queenside. And I don't think this is really the best move because you've already pushed your c and d pawn, so you are castling and developing your rook, but on the other hand, your king is not going to be very safe. I think much more principled would have been simply a move like e6, develop your bishop and castle kingside, especially since you don't really want to be making things complicated because you only need a draw to win this. But we do have castles from MoistCritical and now bishop e3 continuing to develop. And here we have another mistake, in my opinion, by MoistCritical, which is c takes d4. And this now allows Ludwig to open the c file with c takes d4, and you don't want your king on an open file on move 9, let me just tell you. Yes, Ludwig could definitely take advantage by opening up the c file here. Much better for MoistCritical would have just been e5 in my opinion. And now, I mean, you do give Ludwig the option to take this pawn, but the c file will only be half open and not fully open. And also you're just preparing to develop this bishop. You know, developing this bishop is sort of your #1 priority here is black. And also you're contesting the center. So e5 is definitely would have been a better move here from MoistCritical. But we have c takes d4, and Ludwig definitely takes advantage of this with c takes d4. We now have queen to d7. Not exactly sure what this move is doing from MoistCritical, but we have queen to d7. Once again, you just kind of want to develop this bishop. We have knight c3 and now e6, finally developing that bishop. And here we have a4 from Ludwig. And this move doesn't really do much. You know, you opened up this file. Now you want to get your rook to this file and get on the attack as fast as you can. This a4 move, I don't really know exactly what it's doing. So, but we do have a4 from Ludwig. And now h5 from MoistCritical. Sort of the same thing here. You know, like your king is not very safe. Your bishop is undeveloped. King b8 or bishop d6, either of those moves would have been much better than h4. Yeah, I mean, maybe he's going for some kingside pawn attack, but really developing this bishop or getting your king safe is a much higher priority right now because this plan is just, it's not fast enough where the king safety and the development of the dark squared bishop is much more important right now. But we have bishop b5 now from Ludwig and a6 from MoistCritical. And once again, just develop this bishop. Like, come on. This a6 move, you know, you don't really need to kick away this bishop, and this a6 move is just weakening your queen side even more than it already is. So you're just creating all these dark squared weaknesses around your king, and it's not going to be good. You only had 2 pawns left. You can't be creating weaknesses with moves like a6, especially when you're still not fully developed. But we have a6 from MoistCritical, and Ludwig goes for this bishop takes c6. And here as MoistCritical, I think b takes c6 would have been a better move, just closing this c file. But then you do isolate your pawns, and there's just no really good way of keeping your king safe here. So we have queen takes c6, which is probably, I mean, it's not too much worse than b takes c6 in my opinion. But yeah, we have queen takes c6, but now you have to be careful because your queen and king are aligned on this open file. So if white gets a rook to the c file, you might lose your queen. So just got to be aware of that here as black. We have b4 now from white, and really rook c1 would have been a much better move. Just, b4, it's slow, and it also simply hangs this pawn. So here, MoistCritical simply should have taken this pawn. I mean, it is a free pawn. And here, black is actually doing really well. Black even has, like, for example, first you would need to save this knight. So you might think white has tricks here with a move like knight to a2, now threatening the bishop, and also rook to c1. But here, first, black would take this knight, counterattacking white's queen. And you don't want to take with the queen because then you trade queens. You have this very weak pawn structure. Black is up material, and so that would just be very good for black. So you have to ruin your kingside structure and take with the pawn. But now we have bishop a3, saving the bishop and also preventing the rook from coming to c1. But here as white, you might think, okay, I'm just going to attack this bishop, and when the bishop moves, I can play rook to c1. But here white has this, or excuse me, black has this very nice move, which is queen takes f3, hanging the bishop, and now if white takes, black actually has a forced draw with queen g4, king h1, and this will be a perpetual check. And since this is an Armageddon game, black would be declared the winner at the end of this. So black would definitely want to go for this draw if white gives him the opportunity. And yeah, for that reason, bishop takes b4 is definitely the best move here for black. But instead, we have e5, and I don't know what this move is doing from MoistCritical. So we have rook c1 from Ludwig, and now MoistCritical takes this pawn, but it's one move too late because finally after Ludwig played this rook to c1 move, which is a great move from Ludwig, by the way. I forgot to compliment him on that. But yeah, rook c1, finally great move. Thank you for bringing your rook to this open file. Now we have bishop takes b4, but it's one move too late, because now white was threatening to move this knight and the queen would be pinned to your king, which Ludwig does with knight to a2. And yeah, now the queen is pinned and your bishop is also hanging. So here you should really play bishop c5. And if the rook takes the bishop now there is queen takes c5, and black is back in the game because this d pawn was actually pinned to white's queen. So bishop c5, it definitely would have been the best try for MoistCritical here. But if you don't play bishop c5, you should at least move your bishop to somewhere like e7 and force white to trade, force white to take your queen, because if you do what MoistCritical did, which is he initiated this trade, now when white takes back with queen takes c1, it's check, and you're going to lose your bishop on the next move as well. So not only do you lose your queen for a rook, but you also lose your bishop. This did happen in the game. We have queen takes c1 check from Ludwig and king b8. And with no king safety and black being down so much material after knight takes b4, this is looking all over for black here. But who knows, black does have those drawing odds. They might get some stalemate or crazy something, Ludwig can always blunder this game back. We have rook c8 from MoistCritical and queen to b2. E takes d4 now, and knight takes d4. Here, Ludwig actually had a mate in 5 after knight takes a6, and it doesn't matter if the king goes to a8 or a7, the queen will come to d4 next, and this is threatening a checkmate on a7 that cannot be stopped. So you can stop it with a move like rook to c5, but this only delays it a couple moves, and there's nothing you can do here as black. But we do not have this from Ludwig. Instead, we simply have knight takes d4, just taking that free pawn, and anything you do here as Ludwig is going to be winning. We have rook c to c8, or rook c to e8 from MoistCritical, and now rook e1. Maybe MoistCritical will get some magical back rank checkmate on Ludwig. We have rook to d8 and f3, so now eliminating any back rank ideas and also gaining a tempo on this bishop. We have bishop back to c8, MoistCritical trying to defend his king, and bishop to f2. Now we have h4 and h3 from Ludwig, g5, and now queen to e2 from Ludwig. Once again, there was this knight takes a6 checkmate that Ludwig could have gone for. But we have queen to e2 instead, rook d to e8 now, and queen back to c2. Rook d8, MoistCritical does not want to trade, obviously, and now queen to c5, setting up some ideas of knight to c6, and after b takes c6, there would be queen to a7 checkmate from this queen and bishop battery. And this is forced mate anyway. I mean, there's really nothing you can do here. Here, probably black's best try is a move like bishop d7, just giving your king some space. But we have knight d7 instead from MoistCritical, just gaining a tempo on this queen. And now will Ludwig see this knight d to c6 checkmate? Yes, he does. I think that was his reasoning behind putting the queen on c5 in the first place. He plays knight d to c6, and it doesn't matter if the king goes to a8 or if you take this knight. In the game, MoistCritical moved his king to a8, and the next move is queen to a7, which is checkmate. So Ludwig wins the Armageddon game, takes the match, and wins the D group. So, both of these players will be going to the championship bracket, and let me show you the final standings for the D group. There it is, Ludwig with 8, MoistCritical with 7, Mr. Beast and Code Miko with 3 and 0. Both of Mr. Beast and Code Miko, they will be going to the consolation bracket. And here are the final, here are the brackets, the championship bracket and the consolation bracket. So all of the group games have now been played. The players have been seeded into the championship bracket and consolation bracket. We have Benji Fish versus D-Negs, Rain Wilson versus MoistCritical, Ludwig versus Logic, and XQC versus Sardoche in the championship bracket. The first round of the consolation bracket will be Nico versus Rubius, Tubbo versus Code Miko, Mr. Beast versus Michelle Kari, and Pokimane versus Myth. And this is just a standard single elimination format. And yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about this game or this match. Ludwig played really well in these last two games. Both players in this match actually played pretty well overall. But and congratulations to both of them for making it to the championship bracket. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about this game or this match anymore. So thank you for watching, and I'll be covering this championship bracket and consolation bracket games once they happen. They will be starting tomorrow, February 23rd. So thank you for watching, and stay awesome. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.